Good evening and welcome. It's gratifying on this beautiful spring evening to see so many people inside in order to become better informed voters. My name is Diana Dakey. I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. And tonight's debate is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton Political Science Department, and we thank them for their support. Just about the League of Women Voters, it's nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. And our mission is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in their government. And we encourage you to join the League. Please see me at the end of the program if you would like a membership form, and I have a membership form you can take home with you. You may also go to our website, www.LWVLackawanna.org. And also we would encourage you to please make a donation on your way out. Donations help us to cover our costs, including taping, so that the debate can be viewed by a wider audience. And Dan and Cindy and myself or Larry or one of our members will be at the back of the room, and we'll be happy to accept your donation on the way out. And we want to thank ECTV for taping tonight's debate. This is not a live broadcast. The taped debate will air on Comcast 19 local TV, so please check the ECTV schedule, which can be found on the League of Women Voters website. We have a link to that schedule. The taped debate will also be available on YouTube via links from our website. If you were unable to attend Tuesday's discussion about the Lackawanna County Change in Government ballot question, you will also be able to view the event via a link on our website starting approximately tomorrow. We'll have that available there for you. Once again, our website, it's easy to remember, LWVLackawanna.org. So as far as upcoming events, well, the most important event is Election Day, Tuesday, May 20th, so don't forget to vote. And then join us for the election returns via live broadcast from ECTV, and Andrea will be, and other local, Dave Wenzel, thank you, Andrea, will be having a little live discussion as the returns are coming in. Just a few procedural items for the audience. Please turn off and silence your phones or other devices. And also, please be aware of our audiovisual policy that no person or candidate or political group is allowed to use or edit any media from a League of Women Voters event for campaign purposes. So any use of the media requires the express written permission of the League of Women Voters. No excerpts or sound bites may be taken from tonight's discussion or debate. To tonight's debate, it's between the candidates for the Pennsylvania 112th Legislative District. Immediately following at 8:15 will be the debate between the candidates for the 113th Legislative District. I would like to introduce tonight's moderator. Andrea Mulreen will serve as the moderator for tonight's debate. Andrea is presently employed by the Commonwealth Medical College as Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations. And she's the past president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, a position in which she served for 7 years, and she continues to be a tough act to follow for me. We're grateful that she remains on our board as a very active and supportive member. So I'll turn that over to Andrea.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you to all of you for being here this evening, and to our candidates for their commitment to democracy in being here, and also for running for office. I too would like to express my thanks to the University of Scranton's Political Science Department and to Dr. Parenti, who is here this evening representing that department. Thank you for supporting the work of the League and for partnering with us on important events like this. As Diana said, this evening we have 3 candidates for this particular office. This is the 112th Legislative District. As I'm sure everyone knows, there's been a change since the last census. The boundaries were redrawn for our legislative districts, and this evening we have the result of that. So right now, with the 112th, it goes into effect in January, so after this election, and combines parts, about half of the old 112th district, and so that would be some of the part that Kevin Haggerty now represents, and about 40% of the outgoing 115th district, and that would be part that Frank Farina currently represents. So the new 112th district will include the eastern part of Scranton, all of Dunmore, and most of Mid-Valley. And we also welcome this evening Bob Munley, who is another one of the candidates who is vying for this particular seat. I would like to give a little bit of information on tonight's format. The debate should be about 60 minutes in length. The candidates will answer the same set of questions, and no questions were given in advance. All questions will have a 90-second response limit, except we have a speed round, which only requires a yes or no response. Each candidate will be allowed up to 2 rebuttals of 1 minute each, and they can use the full 2-minute allotment at one time if desired, and they will each have a 2-minute closing statement, but there are no opening statements. So with that, I'd like to start off by introducing our candidates. Candidate Frank Farina is from Jessup. He's a graduate of Valley View High School and earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Penn State University. He is currently a representative, as I said, of the 115th District. He serves on the Environmental Resources and Energy Committees and Games and Fisheries and Tourism and Recreational Development. And he has quite a bit of local civic experience, volunteering for a variety of organizations, including his churches and the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce he's a member of. His wife is Carla. He has sons Antonio and Rocco and a daughter Alexa, and we welcome Frank this evening to our panel. Thank you. Kevin Haggerty, and again, they're seated alphabetically on the stage. Kevin Haggerty is from Dunmore, graduate of Dunmore High School, and earned a BS in political science from Villanova University. He is currently the representative in the 112th District. He serves on Children and Youth, Game and Fisheries, Human Services, Veterans Affairs, and Emergency Preparedness. And he too has a civic experience on the board of directors of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Alliance and Penn's Northeast, and has directed intercity athletic and academic summer camps. His wife is Jennifer. He has a son, Kevin, a daughter, Giovanna, and a golden retriever, Rocky. So welcome, Kevin, and all of your family. Bob, thank you for joining us this evening. Bob Munley is from Jessup, Pennsylvania. He is a graduate of Jessup High School and the Scranton State General Hospital School of Radiology. He has served for 4 terms from 1995 to 2011 as a Valley View School Director. His professional experience was as a radiologic technologist at St. Joseph's Hospital, which was then Marion Community Hospital, and he is now retired. And again, a significant amount of civic experience through a variety of organizations, including the Jessup Democratic Executive Committee and St. Jude's Children's Hospital and Pennsylvania for Human Life. His family, his wife is Gloria, and he has sons, Robert Jr. and Edward. So welcome to all 3 of our candidates this evening. My first question will go to Bob Munley, and we drew straws for who would answer the first question first, and then we'll move in a round robin fashion from there on until we get to the closing statements. The first question, Bob, goes to you. A very simple question. What do you bring to the table that your opponents do not? Why are you the best candidate? And you've got 90 seconds.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank...
And Bob, can I interrupt you for 1 second, and we'll start the time again? You need to pull that microphone right up to your mouth as you're talking so that everybody can hear you.
Okay. Let me start off by saying that I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County for hosting this event. I feel that these formats are very important to be transparent and to give the people the opportunity to listen to hear what the candidates have to say on the issues. I feel that my 16 years as a Valley View School Director has given me numerous experiences in a vast amount of areas in education. One of the most important issues that we are confronted with today in the legislature. Along with that, I also have a vast experience in developing budgets. I have a vast experience in education in itself through different types of hearings with teachers, sat on many different committees and subcommittees in the numerous areas where I learned the ability to connect with people and try to make a point, a relevant point that I felt was important. I always had that ability to get that across to my peers when I sat on the school board. There's many different issues as a school director. You hire, you fire. You got adjudication hearings. So that in itself just brings a wealth of experience as a legislator, and as a school director, you have legislative powers and executive powers. So you're sort of a well-rounded individual, especially when you put 16 years into business.
Okay.
And that's why I feel that, and my experience and my maturity as well,
Thank you very much.
is an asset to me.
Thank you. Frank, the question goes to you. What do you bring to the table that your opponents do not? Why are you the best candidate?
I, too, would like to thank the League of Women's Voters for holding this. It is a very important debate. I'd also like to thank everyone in attendance and everyone at home that will be viewing this. For me, that's easy. It's the story of my life. Hard work. That's what defines me. I was raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to make sure that my sister and I had a good life. I worked for everything I have in my life. I was never handed anything. I learned the value of hard work at the age of 8. Hard work is what built my successful business, which is given back to my community time and time again. Hard work is how I won my first election. Hard work is why the teachers have chosen to endorse my candidacy at a time when education is the #1 issue facing the state of Pennsylvania. Hard work is why I'm the only freshman in the minority to pass a bill through the House and the Senate. Hard work is how my staff and I helped over 10,000 families in the last year. We're also ranked in the top 10 in the state for constituent services. Hard work is how I secured over $3 million of funding for my district. Hard work is how we're going to move our community forward. When I won my first election, someone said to me, "Don't ever forget where you came from." I'll never forget overhearing my mother sitting at the table with her friends having coffee saying she only had $8 to last until the end of the week. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget being a young boy knowing that we were only one misfortune away from losing everything. My hard work and sharing your fears is what's going to move our community forward.
Thank you very much. Kevin, the question to you. What do you bring to the table that your opponents don't? Why are you the best candidate?
Can we hold this?
Sure.
Andrea, thank you, and thanks to the League of Women Voters, and thanks to everybody for being here tonight, and my wife, Jennifer. I think Frank and Bob will agree with this. There's a very stressful moment of our lives during these campaigns. It's something that it's hard to explain to anybody who's not doing it, so I want to thank both of you for being here as well. What separates me, I think, is that I wasn't recruited to become a state representative by committees, parties. The people put me into reform government, and that's what I'm doing. We have the 49th worst state in job growth. Locally, in the city of Scranton, we're falling under the sea. Our taxes are gone up 125%. And so I wrote 2 pieces of specific legislation to protect the taxpayer in Scranton and Lackawanna County. The first piece caps our home rule charter county at 25 mills. I don't know if everybody knows this here, but in 2006, the Common Pleas Court went against the state mandate, and they allowed our taxes to go up 48%, 38%, and 9 years later, over 125% in Lackawanna County. The mandate says that you can't do that. My legislation is pending right now to fix this. The same goes for the city of Scranton. We need to get rid of school property taxes and rebuild our economy. People are paying taxes at such a high rate. They're losing their homes. They're not buying food. They're not buying medicine. Our city will never recover until we change the tax structure.
Okay, thank you. Frank, you will answer the next question first, and I have a little bit of an introduction, and then I will ask the question, okay? So here's the introduction for everyone, and I will state up front, I asked this question 2 years ago. So this is, a lot of what we ask is, and nothing has changed. So this one is, in 2012, the State Integrity Investigation, a project of the Center for Public Integrity, Global Integrity, and Public Radio International, released its state-by-state report card based on analysis of each state's laws and practices that deter corruption and promote accountability and openness. Pennsylvania ranked 20th overall with a grade of C-. Now, you might think that that's not too bad, C-, but the Commonwealth received Fs in four categories. So judicial accountability, political financing, state budget processes, and redistricting. So throughout tonight, we're going to address some of those items. The first one that I want to ask about is judicial accountability. So we received an F with particularly low scores for regulations governing conflicts of interest and disclosure of assets of state-level judges. What actions can and should the state legislature take to address this? Frank, the question goes to you.
I would have to say, well, first and foremost is that the first thing that I've learned since I've been in the legislature is we can't be an expert on everything. And so I'll usually, we need to refer to our members that are on those committees, but the number one thing I would say is transparency. I mean, we need transparency. And a lot of that comes from the election process. And we have to make sure that we are electing the right people in office. Transparency and, like I said, the voting. So we have to make voting easier and electing the right people in office.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, the question goes to you.
Thanks, Andrea. We need to immediately take money out of judicial races. We have candidates running for office who want to preside over attorneys who give them money. And right there is the conflict. If somebody gives you $25,000 and your case is being heard in front of them, there's a problem. We need to change the way they run for office, not once every 10 years and then just pass through a retention. They need to run every 4 years. They need to run against other competition. Nobody needs to be more accountable than our judges. Look what took place in this region. We're famous, or I should say infamous. It's tragic. Nothing more important in the world than our children. I was an inner city teacher. I taught court-adjudicated children who had nothing. Their last place for hope was the judicial system. And in Lackawanna County and Luzerne County, it failed us miserably. We need to change the way we do things. We need to stand up. We need to tell people what's going on. We can't be afraid because somebody might have a little bit more power than you. You got to stand up and have political courage right now. That's what I've done for 18 months. I'm not saying I'm not afraid. I'm not saying I don't wake up in the middle of the night wondering sometimes, well, I bit off more than I can chew. But it's who I am, because I know I've been given resources in life. Lots of people are vulnerable and they're afraid, and they're not going to be on my watch.
Thank you. Bob, actually, you can pull that microphone right directly in front of you, since Kevin and Frank are sharing, so.
Okay.
So bring it right over directly in front of you.
Okay.
And the question goes to you.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to say, judicial accountability it's a fundamental democratic requirement of our federal and state governments. I also feel that in some way, the accountability itself, judicial accountability, in some way intrudes on the judicial independence. It sort of takes away a little bit that. But we still need the three executive branches. There has to be checks and balances. Between the executive, judicial, and the legislative branches, they all watch one another. There's a fine set of balance, of checks and balance that are put in place to make sure that there's transparency. And this is a good thing, because this way, there's not going to be, it's not an intrusion, but I do feel that it's very important to have these checks and balances put in place, and it keeps everybody on their toes, and it keeps them very transparent. The legislative branch, the executive branch, they're not going to do something that they feel that they could get away with, if it's not according to the rules, because they're going to be watched. And when you're watched by two other branches, you're going to get, you're going to get caught. So I feel the transparency is a great thing, and that's my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, this next question goes to you first. So let's talk about political financing. Again, as I said, Pennsylvania received in this report in 2012 an F for political financing, including a 0 in the category pertaining to citizen access to records for financing political parties, and very low scores for the effectiveness of current regulations for both individual and political party financing. What actions, again, can and should the state legislature take to address this problem?
Andrea, campaign finance reform is something that's been talked about in Washington and all the state legislatures across this country, and nothing's ever done. In the state of Pennsylvania, you can give an unlimited amount of money. You can give me a contribution of $1 million tomorrow. There are no limits. And with that becomes a special interest agenda. Your unions, your PACs, they can give you money that other individual people don't have. So I feel very proud not to take a lot of special interest money. I do take some, I do support our unions and they support me, but I don't take unlimited amounts of money. I don't sell my vote. When you look at what goes on in Harrisburg during the transportation bill, on a Monday night, we stopped that vote. Frank did, I did, we stopped that vote. The very next day, well, that night, the phone calls began. And they asked us, well, what do you need back in the district? What can we do for you? I said, I don't understand. We stopped that vote. 28 cents on a gallon of gas? For this economy, for the people living in Scranton and this region? I said, I can't do that. I said, I don't understand, though. We stopped the vote. They said, well, we're running that bill again. And they ran that bill again and put 28 cents on every gallon of gas. That's what Harrisburg is. If we don't stand up for real campaign finance reform, you look what goes on at Washington. It is a money game. You get into office, you're running every 2 years. Who could raise the most money, and that's the winner. That is not what this country was designed to represent. Let's fix campaign finance reform. Let's set examples. We've set examples. Frank and I have set examples on per diems and not taking cars and not using insurances. So we are setting some examples.
Thank you. Bob, the question goes to you now.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The question pertains to political financing. So Pennsylvania received a 0 in the category in this report pertaining to citizen access to records for financing political parties, and very low scores for the effectiveness of current regulations for both individual and political party financing. So the question is really, what can and should you as a legislator do to correct this particular problem?
Well, first of all, let me say that I totally disagree with the fact that there are no limits of campaign financing to individual candidates. This, to me, seems to give somebody the opportunity that is backing an individual candidate that are very wealthy. They could literally buy an election. And this is not part of a democratic process as far as I'm concerned. There needs to be a limit. There needs to be a limit on that. There are some limits on political party contributions. Now, other than banks, corporations, and unions, there are no limits. So an individual could come along with a few $1 million, and if they want to give a couple $100,000 to a candidate that they want to get in there, they have the opportunity to do that. And that certainly puts, especially incumbent candidates, because when you have the special interest groups that come into the legislature, and they want to get some particular bill passed, and they know what legislators are in favor of that, or even if they are not in favor of that, it still gives them the opportunity to try to sway them in that direction, if they're able to, to give a large campaign donation. And I think that is totally wrong. They should take that out of the campaign. That's one part of campaign finance that I think is ludicrous. It needs to be taken out.
Thank you. And Frank, the question goes to you now.
And I would agree with what both gentlemen had to say, but I would even take it a step further as to not just the amount of money that an individual or a PAC or someone can contribute to a candidate. I think there needs to be a cap on the amount of money that could be spent in each individual race, whether it's on a local level, state level, or a federal level, because there are candidates, good viable candidates, that don't get a shot at it because they can't afford to raise money, or they can't be involved in the process because they don't have. So And it falls back onto the last question you asked us, and you're going to get more transparency and we'll have better regulations. But to kind of follow up a little bit on what Kevin said, we did stop the transportation vote that Monday night, and they were trying to persuade and buy our votes. The only part I disagree with Kevin on a little bit is, our stance is, if we don't agree with the process, we should be there and we should be fighting to change it. They tried to buy Kevin's vote, they tried to buy my vote, but I stuck it out, and I was actually able to persuade some of my colleagues not to vote for it. We shut it down a few times, but it's important. If you don't like the process, you stay there and you try to change it.
Okay, thank you. The next question, Bob, you will respond to first. Let's move on and talk about jobs a little bit. According to a report released in February, the 8.7% unemployment rate in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre-Hazleton metropolitan area continues to be the highest of any metropolitan area in the state and above both the national and state rates. What immediate actions can and will you, as a state legislator, take that will impact unemployment in our region? Bob, it goes to you.
Yes. First of all, let me say that we need to have a stronger emphasis on investing in manufacturing. We need to have a stronger emphasis on investing in clean energy. Clean energy is the wave of the future. It's non-polluting source of energy. We have a lot of environmental degradation going on in this country because of the lack of clean energy. All these fossil fuels create a great deal of environmental hazards. So I feel by investing in a very strong and vibrant educational system. Without that, you're sort of just banging yourself up against the wall. You need to have the funding to promote programs. We need to invest in trade schools. We need to invest in community college and let these college students learn the trades in the manufacturing business. We have the Marcellus Shale. Lackawanna County recently received a grant for the Marcellus Shale. That is just one step in the right direction, because this is going to be one of the biggest industries that this country has ever seen. And it has the ability to fund a lot of the deficits that are going on in the General Assembly right now. Those funds could be dispersed so widely, it could basically correct educational subsidies that we lost. It could correct infrastructure. It could correct Medicare expansion. You could even add into
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Frank, the question goes to you, and again, it is what immediate actions can and will you, as a state legislator, take that will impact the unemployment in our region?
I've already taken those actions. I've worked to get a KOZ in Jessup, 340 acres, to bring in a company, Invenergy, and the important part of that is that we're going to bring in a site-specific organization or corporation to invest in our community. It's a $500 million worth of infrastructure. So when the KOZ is up, they're not going to pick up and move out like we've seen in the past. I also have an ABC plan, American-made, buy local, create jobs. I have an economic development advocate to see how that we could bring in not only American-made goods, but stuff that's manufactured out of state. How do we have it manufactured in Pennsylvania? I've secured a grant for the Valley View Industrial Park to create 250 jobs. We have to keep pressure on our governor to expand Medicaid. Rand Corporation said that Medicaid expansion could create 35,000 to 39,000 jobs tax-generating jobs in Pennsylvania. The Keystone Works program, we need to support the Keystone Works program. And also our small business incubators, something else that's very important that we really need to push. So I've taken my measures already as a state representative.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, the same question to you. What immediate actions can and will you, as a state legislator, take that will impact unemployment in our region?
Andrea, there's not an economist in this country that will say anything different than what I'm about to say. High taxes causes high unemployment. And right now, in the city of Scranton and Lackawanna County, we have some of the highest taxes in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're going to eliminate school property taxes. I'm a fervent supporter of House Bill 76, which would eliminate school property taxes and let everybody pay. A 1% increase in sales tax, a 1% in wage tax. Tax the gas companies like I did. I introduced the legislation, 8% to tax the natural gas companies. Now we're in the right direction. Now people have extra money. Now they're spending in their local community, and now businesses are thriving. That's how jobs are created, spending, making sure that citizens have an additional amount of money in their bank accounts. When the people who are against House Bill 76 say, well, you're going to be taxed for your wage tax. You're going to get taxed every paycheck. Well, that's true. And if you make $40,000 a year, at the end of that year, you're going to have to pay a tax of $400. But if you get your property tax, your school property tax bill, you're talking $1,800. So you imagine if every Pennsylvania had an extra $1,000 to $1,500 in their pockets, we would create hundreds and hundreds of jobs. High taxes causes high unemployment.
Thank you. Frank, you wanted to use a rebuttal.
Yes, and I live by the motto of don't tell me what you're going to do, show me what you're going to do. And Kevin and I agree. I want property tax reform just as everybody else in this room wants it. But we've had our opportunity on House Bill 76, and we both voted no. So, and we know that that's not for you to say that you're spearheading that, you're deceiving the voters. And we had our opportunity. There's $14 billion worth of revenue there that we need to make up. And you're going to increase the income tax from 3% to 7%. You're going to increase sales tax from 6% to 15%. You're going to start taxing prescription drugs, food, and clothing. That just falls back on the hardworking Pennsylvanians. Definitely eliminate property tax, but for those who need it the most, like our seniors. And to create a reserve so if we go into another recession, that we still have the proper funding for our schools, because otherwise our schools will fall apart.
Thank you. Kevin, you wanted to use a rebuttal also.
Thanks, Andrea. And Frank is correct. When the first couple months we were in the state legislature, I did vote no on House Bill 76. And then I began to explore it, and then I started going to meetings. Nobody else came. I walked into a meeting one time in the city hall. I was the only legislator there. And after that meeting, I realized House Bill 76 is the only way we could rebuild the city of Scranton. These are the facts. See, I was given a check, too, from PSA, the Pennsylvania State Education Association. But I gave it back because they can't buy my vote right now. They can't endorse me. I didn't go to their interview because I knew I was going to be for House Bill 76 to eliminate property taxes. I got the endorsement of the Scranton Federation of Teachers because they know darn well that our schools are going to be broke in 5 to 7 years. And then what happens when our schools are broke? Higher taxes. We are taxing this community to death. We don't change it soon. We have 94 co-sponsors in Harrisburg. That's more co-sponsors than any other bill. This is reality. We need political courage right now, and I'm showing it.
Thank you. So, Frank.
I would like to...
Okay, Bob, absolutely.
The rebutting this House Bill 76, was that the question?
Pull that a little bit closer to you. The question was, what immediate actions can and will you, as a state legislator, take that will impact unemployment in our region? We are actually going to ask a question about property tax, but that was an unemployment question.
Okay. First of all, one of the most important things that I think that we need to do, and Governor Corbett is 100% against this, is you need to expand Medicaid. Without Medicaid expansion, we're going to have over 380,000 people that are going to be uninsured in this country. And with Obamacare, I mean, this is counterproductive. The people that cannot afford to go out and buy private insurance, on top of that, they're going to be penalized, and they're going to have to pay anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a year or extra, simply because they don't have insurance and they can't afford to buy their own property, their own medical insurance. So by bringing in Medicaid expansion, we are going to take in 35,000 jobs. It's going to take in over $2 billion a year in the state. If we don't accept that, that money is going to some other state. Pennsylvania will lose that money. And we do not no one gets denied medical care in this country. When you walk into an emergency room, you don't have to have insurance. They will care for you. But they're not going to get paid. That's going to come out of our pockets. Each and every one of us that has personal insurance, we will pay that bill.
Thank you.
Can I do it for rebuttal too, or?
You can, but I am going to ask a property tax question. If you want to wait for the question, you don't have to use a rebuttal. It's up to you.
Well, this was about Medicaid. You mentioned the governor.
Okay, well then, sir, absolutely. Go right ahead.
And it's important to discuss this because the governor of Pennsylvania called me into his office. I'm a first-term legislator, and he called me into his office and sat me down, and he started giving me the history of the governor's office and all the hoopla. And I looked at the governor of Pennsylvania, and I said, Governor, I'm a first-term freshman from Scranton. Why am I here? And he said, well, you're the deciding vote on the Human Services Committee, whether or not we're going to bring Medicaid into Pennsylvania. And I told the governor, no, that's simple. So, Governor, the people from my area are some of the lowest poor income people in the state of Pennsylvania, and I can't do it. And that's real life. I wasn't courageous. That's who I am. I know what our people are suffering. I know what they're going through. But when the governor of Pennsylvania looks at you and tells you he's going to help you if you help him, and you tell him no, that's how you lead. You stand up to people at home, and you stand up to people in Harrisburg, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Let's move on and talk about property tax, which is the next question. So specifically pertaining to Act 47, there was a Times Tribune editorial on April 13th that stated that a lack of political will in City Hall contributes mightily to the government's failure to recover, but it's only part of the problem. The state government could do plenty, and this is again an editorial, not my words, but from the the Times Tribune. The state government could do plenty if lawmakers are able to summon political courage of their own. One of our biggest problems is that we need property tax reform. So let's talk about there's a little bit more time now, let's talk about what you would introduce in a bill for property tax reform if you were going to do that, and I know that some of it's already been done. What would it contain? Specifically tell us what it would contain. And this question goes first to Frank.
I don't exactly remember which state it is. I believe it's Virginia. I'm sorry, it's Virginia. They have property tax relief for seniors, 65 and older. So I think that's the main focus, is we need to make sure that we have property tax reform for those most in need. But we also have to make sure that we have the proper funding for our schools if we do fall into a recession, and that also, like I said, regardless of how they want to paint the picture, there's $14 billion that we receive in property tax revenue. So they have to make up for it somewhere, and they're going to get it from you. So it's going to fall back onto the hardworking men and women of Pennsylvania. So by giving it to the seniors who are most in need without putting the burden on the hardworking men and women.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, the question goes to you.
Andre, I introduced a home rule charter piece of legislation to cap the taxes, as I discussed before. In Lackawanna County, we are a home rule county. There's 6 counties across Pennsylvania who fall into that category. And because of our socioeconomic background, we don't have a very wealthy population. The state mandated this home rule charter status that you can't raise taxes past 25 mils. That protects people who are on fixed incomes, people who are unemployed. As you noted, we have the highest unemployment. You can't raise taxes exponentially year after year after year when senior citizens aren't getting increases in Social Security, when people aren't getting increases in their jobs, when jobs aren't coming into the area. You can't do that. We did it in Lackawanna County. We raised taxes 50% in 1 year, and we all know what happened. Kickbacks, scandal, and the poor people you can't see. The senior citizens that are at home wondering if they could use their medicine, if they could buy their food, because they're a nervous wreck because they can't afford their taxes. Because you know what? They always pay their taxes. They always pay their taxes no matter what. And we've turned our back on some of the greatest Americans who aged, who don't have much, who lose loved ones. They're afraid, and we have to help them, and we have to help our local economy. Let's put caps on taxes, and let's change our government.
Thank you. Bob, the question now goes to you.
Yes, I certainly do agree with that. My feeling is also that as far as the property tax goes, you know, with the lottery system in place and Governor Corbett again tried his hardest to do away with the lottery system. In the Pennsylvania lottery system, since its inception, there was over $23 billion that was taken in. Every single dime of that money went to senior citizen programs for tax rebates, Meals on Wheels, rent rebates for people, transit, free bus rides. And I found it astonishing that he wanted to do away with that program. Luckily, he was not successful. But my feeling is he is going to try to do it again. Now, by incorporating, all the money goes to senior citizens that we collect in the Pennsylvania lottery. We get 55 cents on a dollar from slot machines in the state of Pennsylvania. That also goes to your senior citizens. And that alone, with those two entities coupled together, can certainly, and you need to keep the taxes down as well, but they can certainly make it more sustainable for our senior citizens.
Thank you. Kevin, the next question you will respond to first. We're going to do our speed round now. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you a series of questions and go round robin and answer yes or no, and that's all I'm going to accept from anybody is a yes or no on these questions. No explanations, just yes or no. And then I'll come back, and Kevin, you'll start again, and you'll be able to then expand on that. So the first series, the topic is Marcellus Shale and a severance tax. So the first question for each one of you, just yes or no, will you vote yes or no to implement a severance tax?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And Frank?
2 yeses.
All right. Second question. And I said I'd only accept a yes or no. I'm going to ask for a tax rate now, so I'll accept a number on this one. What tax rate is appropriate, Kevin?
8%.
Bob?
10%.
And Frank?
I'd love to see 8%, but we can't even...
No, just 8%. One a number, that's it.
Let's go with 8%. Shoot for the stars.
All right. So now, again, boy, I got this one wrong on the yes or no. So should the revenue from the tax be used only in the counties where the wells exist or statewide? So say county or statewide. One word.
Statewide.
Bob?
Statewide.
And
Statewide.
Frank. All right. And then the last one is, should the revenue from the tax be used for general purposes or have specific designations such as education and the environment? So the answer should be general or specific.
Specific.
Bob?
Specific.
And Frank.
Specific.
Okay. Kevin, you've got your 90 seconds now. Explain your answers in any way you want to talk about a severance tax and what parts of this you think are important.
All the other states across this country tax the natural gas companies, and there's no excuses that we don't. In the state of Texas, I think they have an 8% like we're calling for in Pennsylvania, and higher education in Texas is basically free because of the natural gas industry. Think about that. Here we are at the University of Scranton. I think the 1 year total tuition for the University of Scranton is now close to $50,000 a year. I can't imagine putting my kids through school. They're only 3 and 1. Frank, you have young kids as well. And I can't imagine what those costs are going to be then. We need to change these things right now. If we don't stand up and put a real tax to this gas industry, we're going to be in trouble in our economy. Our public school systems are in trouble. If we can create property tax independence, eliminate school property taxes, put a 1% sales tax, a 1% wage tax, and then tax the gas companies and be very, very specific where that money goes. There's no way I'm voting for a gas tax on the Marcellus industry and then saying it's coming back to Harrisburg to the general fund. No way. I think we all agree we get specific, and it should be education.
Okay, thanks. Bob, the question goes to you.
Yes. I feel the Marcellus Shale gas tax, especially if it does pass at a 10%, that's going to take in probably an additional $1 billion per year. That was what the educational cuts were last year, $1 billion. That tax could be so widespread. I certainly do think, though, that you need to have some money put away for an environmental hazard. The Marcellus Shale, when you're extracting gas, you have fossil fuels, and there's always a chance of environmental hazards when you're dealing with toxic chemicals. Hopefully that's not going to happen, because this is certainly going to be the biggest industry that we ever came close to seeing in the state of Pennsylvania. The only other state in the country that has more is Texas. We just recently surpassed Louisiana in natural gas production. Now we are second in the country. So I feel that, especially with the 10% extraction tax, that could be widespread, and it could be with specific areas, but it could certainly put a big dent on a lot of the deficits that we're confronted with in the legislature today.
Thank you. Frank, the question to you.
We have two problems if we don't designate where the money goes, and that is, Kevin could agree with me with this, they'll play games down there and they'll take money from one place and put it somewhere else and making it seem like they've funded this at an all-time high level in the state, and they haven't. And, you know, our education system is $1 billion in cuts, where the Marcellus Shale, which, you know, I think it's one of the greatest things that happened to the state of Pennsylvania, but it can make up for those funding cuts. Governor Corbett, he ran and he made promises and he said he wouldn't raise our taxes, but he really did. Indirectly, he raised our taxes because the funding cuts to our education put the burden back on the school districts to raise your taxes. So he indirectly raised your taxes. That money from the Marcellus Shale should go back into the education, and we wouldn't be forced to raise taxes. And also, another thing we have to look at, one red flag is I'm on the Environmental Resource and Energy Committee. I teach my children, when we do an array of outdoor activities, I say make sure we leave our environment how we found it. No garbage, nothing. A red flag for me is DEP has been underfunded by 59% since Governor Ridge's administration. So that's a red flag. The money's got to go to education and funding our DEP. Make sure it's properly regulated.
Kevin, you used your 2 rebuttals. We're going to move on, and hopefully you'll have a chance to, because I have a lot more questions that I haven't gotten to yet. So the next question, let's move on to the state liquor stores. And Bob, you'll answer this question first. So Pennsylvania is only one of 2 states, the other being Utah, that maintains absolute control over all aspects of the wholesale and retail distribution of wine and liquor. Do you support change to our current system? And if yes, tell us specifically what changes you would vote for.
No, I do not support change. I think that the state liquor stores that, as we have them today, number one, they're taking in approximately $750 million a year. If we were to sell all of our state liquor stores, we would have one big influx of finances, but after that, what will we have? They've been averaging, I feel, close to $750,000 a year. The State Liquor Control Board has strong regulations. One of the most impressive things that I feel, and one of the biggest reasons why I am a strong proponent of them, is the fact that the state of Pennsylvania has the least amount of traffic deaths with teenagers because of drinking. They make it very, very hard for a youngster to try to go and purchase liquor. They have strict regulations, and I also feel it's a strong deterrent for a youngster to try to walk into a state liquor store and get a bottle of wine to try to ask for with a fake identification card, because they could do it. They could get away with it. I don't think that they would have the you know, in the stores, is what I'm trying to say. They won't have that ability. They will not have that expertise to stop that. And because there's certainly a reason. It's just not just happening why Pennsylvania has the least amount of traffic deaths due to drunken driving in teenagers. The reason is our state liquor stores, and we need to maintain them.
Thank you, Bob. Frank, the question goes to you. Would you have any, what changes would you vote for, if any?
As far as the privatization of liquor?
Well, do you support change to our current system? And you tell us, do you support change? And if you do support change, what kind of change?
No,
I'm not saying any kind in particular.
No, that was actually one of our biggest victories as Democrats in the minority. We only have 92 Democrats, and that was one of the things that we were able to stop, was the privatization of the liquor. For me, a couple red flags. One is, you know, Governor Corbett says his excuse is, well, we're one of 2 states in the country that have our own liquor, our state stores. But you want to, so now you're saying you want to follow the national average. But then when it comes to, hey, we're the only state that doesn't tax the Marcellus Shale. So when it's convenient for you, you want to follow other states. But when it's convenient for the people, you don't. But it's the safety of our children, because you don't have some high school kid working in a convenient that doesn't care if he's carding his buddies. 5,000 jobs. There's 5,000 family-sustaining jobs that we create with our liquor stores. And one more red flag is, when they tried to sell this idea to us in the legislature, to me, it's not a good idea when your first proposal is, well, we could buy it back in 10 years from now. So you're going to sell it for $1, but you could buy it back in 10 years for $10,000. That's a red flag for me.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, the same question goes to you. Do you support change to our current system? And if yes, tell us specifically what changes you would vote for.
Andrea, I'm obviously not for the privatization. There are ways to talk about modernization with their liquor store systems, but we can't talk about modernization when the governor won't tax the natural gas companies. We're bringing in $750 million to $1 billion in revenue to this state, and he won't tax the natural gas company. How can we even have these discussions when he cuts $1 billion to education? We aren't generating revenue in the state of Pennsylvania. So how could we sit down and say, let's get rid of the liquor stores? We can't do it. We can't even begin to approach this subject. Tom Corbett won't tax the gas companies because the gas companies gave him $2.5 million to win re-election. Want to talk about campaign finance reform again? That's the state of Pennsylvania right now. Give me the money, help me win the election. Let's not think about the overall common good of our economy. So I will one day talk about modernization if we tax the gas companies.
Okay. This is actually going to be the last question that I ask because unfortunately we're running out of time. So let's move on to the environment. Frank, you will answer this question first. So specifically dealing with Marcellus Shale. Given the opportunities and dangers inherent in natural gas drilling from Marcellus Shale, what legislation needs to be passed to provide maximum protection to the environment and public health while still capitalizing on the economic potential of the natural resource? Frank, to you.
Like I mentioned earlier, when we're funded at a level of 59% less than Ridge's administration, it doesn't matter what kind of legislation we pass if it's not being properly regulated. So I think that's the number one thing we have to do. We have to make sure, before we could write any legislation, we have to make sure that DEP is properly funded and able to regulate Marcellus Shale. Again, it could be one of the greatest things to ever enter the state of Pennsylvania, but we can't revisit our anthracite years and leave our state a mess. We can't let them come in here, take our gas, not tax it, and then pick up, move out, and leave us in shambles. One thing I want to say with any of the questions we've answered, though, is being in Harrisburg, I've created many relationships, and that's going to be important because, like I mentioned earlier, we're only 92 Democrats, so that's another very important aspect. Is we do need to compromise. We need to compromise and start working for the people, not for a particular party or for our own interests.
Okay. Kevin, the question to you, and again, what legislation needs to be passed to provide maximum protection to the environment and public health while capitalizing on the economic potential of Marcellus Shale?
Andrea, I have friends here tonight who work for the natural gas companies, and I am a huge proponent of what's going on in the state of Pennsylvania. This is the greatest natural resource in the history of our world, not our country, of our world. And right now, when Tom Corbett immediately depletes the DEP, it's a red flag. It's telling us there's no regulation. It started off bad. This didn't have to be that way. We need to fully fund our DEP program to make sure that our environment is safe. What takes place when drilling goes on for 25 years, 30 years, we don't know. It never happened before. But we do know that there's 36 mine fires burning in the state of Pennsylvania. We do know there's one burning in Oliphant right now, in Carbondale, in Simpson. And that's an environmental hazard. So what's to take place with all of the drilling? We don't know. So fully fund our DEP and make sure our environment is protected first, not second, first. But what this industry could do for this state, for our area, is something we should all be very proud of. This could really change things. We're a player now in this country. The state of Pennsylvania is a player. Let's do it right, and let's elect a Democrat to governor.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And Bob, the question to you.
Okay, I totally agree with what Kevin just said. Governor Corbett, I believe it was 50% of the workforce in the Department of Environmental Protection that he cut. And I just found it, I couldn't believe, how can you cut 50%? How could this governor cut 50% of one of the most important industries that we have in this country today? The state of Pennsylvania, we are, like I mentioned before, the second most producing of gas in the country. And he found it proper to cut the staff of the Department of Environmental Protection by 50%. We saw what happened up in Dimock, Pennsylvania a few years ago. That was a terrible environmental hazard. When you're using all these fracking fluids, you know, I mean, there's literally millions and millions of gallons of water that have all these toxic chemicals, from formaldehyde to arsenic and everything else, to put fracks into the shale to release the gas. And we all know that sometimes, even though they do have regulations set up to stop these chemicals from getting into the groundwater, that is not always the case. Sometimes it does. And when that happens and you destroy your water supply, your groundwater, water cannot be manufactured. And that's it. It's extremely important. He needs to bring a force back. And like I said, we all agree on this, that you have to have strong regulations when you're dealing with natural gas extraction.
Thank you. That concludes our questions for this evening, and we'll now move on to closing statements. Once again, we drew straws for who would give the first closing statement first, and then we will move in a round robin after that. So Frank, you have 2 minutes for the closing statement to your constituents.
Once again, I'd just like to thank the League of Women's Voters for holding this, thank the University of Scranton, thank the two gentlemen for attending, and thank everyone in the audience. The decisions that my mom made when I was a young child that made me who I am today, I came to a crossroads in my life where I had to make decisions that are going to affect my children someday. And I had a successful business. I was running a successful business, and it was just on the brink of becoming very, very successful. But there's a saying that I live my life by, and that is, in 20 years from now, it's not going to matter what kind of house I lived in. It's not going to matter what kind of car I drove, or it's not going to matter how much money I had in the bank. But in 20 years from now, what will matter is that I made the difference in the life of a child today. I was born and raised right here in Northeast Pennsylvania. I'm proud to call it my home. I love it. There's no other place in the world better than Northeast PA to raise a family. And I chose to raise my children here. But I don't want them to go away to college 20 years from now, come home, shake my hand and say, Dad, there's no opportunity. I'm leaving. I'm gone. And I'll say, you know what? I spent 20 years raising you here so you could raise your children here. And I just want to create opportunity. I made no promises the first time I ran, and I make no promises this time, except for one thing. If I'm your state representative, I could promise you shouldn't have any fears, and you're not alone, because I'm here for you. I'm here for you. One last thing. The only selfishness that I take out of this is that when my time on this earth has expired, I want to be remembered as three things: a statesman, a humanitarian, and a friend.
All right, and that concludes Frank's remarks for this evening. How about a round of applause for Frank? Frank Farina. Thank you, Frank. Kevin, your closing statement, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks to the League of Women Voters You guys are great because there aren't a lot of debates, and we could always count on you. One of the things I want to touch on is what goes on in the media and politics, especially during heated races and redistricting, and they make us look like these bitter enemy rivals. And there's some of it, and that's the truth. There's some of it. We're competitive. We're both vying for something that we care about. We're both trying to protect our families, all three of us. And the truth is, Frank and I like each other. And we talk, and we had an hour conversation yesterday afternoon. We talked on the phone last night. That's the reality. Whatever happens in this race, I want to just say thank you to Bob and Frank for having the courage to put everything on the line and to run for office. Not a lot of people could say they understand that. And we all do, and it's so important to our country and to our public service. I want to leave with one very, very important thing to this region. I too want my children to have an opportunity to stay here and live here. And if we don't get in charge of the tax structure, they're never going to stay here. We're never going to stay here. We're failing drastically. We need to eliminate our school property taxes. If we do not eliminate our school property taxes and go after some of the big guys like the natural gas companies, we will be taxed to death. The city of Scranton raised taxes 125%. The school board in Scranton is now calling for another increase. It is never going to stop. We could say all the things we want here. We need to eliminate school property taxes. We need to tax the natural gas companies. We need to treat ordinary, average Americans like they matter, and not just the big industry and the special interests. That's why I'm in Harrisburg, and I'm not real well liked in Harrisburg. I'm liked here, though. They want me down there. I don't want to be liked in Harrisburg, but I will be respected.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Andrea.
Again, that's your candidate, Kevin Haggerty. And Bob, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Andrea. I, too, would like to thank the League of Women Voters and also the University of Scranton for giving us, the three of us, the opportunity to have this forum here tonight. I found it quite enjoyable, and I thought it was informative, and there should be more of it. I served on the Valley View School Board for 16 years. I also served on the intermediate unit for 12 years. I felt that with experience, being on the school board, you serving especially a long period of time like I did, it comes with a great amount of experience in a wide areas. Everything from educational issues, tax issues, people issues. I educated 2 children. I have a 30-year-old son, and I have a 28-year-old son. One of my sons was educated, my younger son, Eddie, was educated at Penn State University, and he is working locally. My other son was educated in Boston, Massachusetts, and his tuition rates there were sky high. He would like to come home. He would like to come home and work. It's simply impossible to do that in our area simply because we do not have the economic structure here where you can do that. It's impossible when you go away and you're paying $40,000 a year to educate yourself and then try to come back in the Scranton area because you are not going to make the money that you need to have a sustainable lifestyle. You'll barely be able to pay your bills. You'll barely be able to pay your student loans. We need economic development and we need economic growth in our area. We are lacking that terribly. I feel that I have the ability to make connections. You need to be able to connect with people, not only to communicate. Connection is the key word. When you walk into a caucus room, I feel that that's the most important asset that you have. If you could connect, there's a transfer. There's a transfer of feelings, and you can be able to get a point across. I'm a lot older than these 2 gentlemen to my right, and I also feel that sometimes age comes with wisdom.
You can finish your sentence.
I thought you said that was 3 minutes.
No, 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was 2 minutes?
I
Okay.
said no saving your rebuttal for the end. That's what
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. How about a round of applause for all 3 of our candidates? Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. Remember, this is the 112th Legislative District, and our districts have changed, so make sure that you know who the candidates are in your particular district. These are the Democratic candidates. There are no Republican candidates, so the gentleman who wins this particular race should be your next representative in the 112th District, even though you're voting in the primary. So the primary is critically important. Don't forget to check out YouTube and ECTV for the program that we did pertaining to the change in the form of government in Lackawanna County. And on your way out, if you like what we do, please make a financial contribution to the League. Thank you. Thank you.